Hey friends, so we're gonna do a little look at two decks. So if you follow me on Instagram, I'm starting this again instantly. I got 8 minutes into the video and something went wrong because that's how things are going this week. So this is a new deck from Llewellyn called Tarot of the Vampires. I ordered it because I wanted to do a review of it, knowing that I probably wouldn't like it for various reasons I'll get into. I didn't like it, and so spoiler alert, this is a sort of review, and I don't like this deck. But I'm going to tell you why. So as part of that, I was actually not going to even review it and just send it back. But I remembered this deck existed. I didn't have this deck prior to this week. But I thought, actually, isn't there another deck from Llewellyn about vampires? And I looked and there is, and I ordered it. It has weirdly the same name minus, a I here and a Y here. This is a pretty well-known, well-loved deck. I'd never really looked at it before. It didn't really draw me. But I was so sort of weirdly annoyed by this deck that I had to get it to compare and make a video. And so this actually is more of a review of Llewellyn than this deck, although we'll look at both decks. It's interesting to me that they chose to publish a deck with a similar title. All the conspiracy elements, conspiracy theory parts of me, which aren't really me, but I'm like, are they gonna put this one out of print because they're done with it and they're gonna bring this one in? I don't know, or they wanted something modern. It could have had a different name even. It's very strange to me, but it also seems to represent something that I have seen happening in the mainstream tarot publishing marketplace. And that's the kind of thing I want to talk about today, using these two decks. And because I think it's most apparent with Llewellyn, although not exclusively, I actually feel like Llewellyn is going backwards where other companies maybe are trying to make some progress. The one place where this deck actually exceeds this one, in my opinion, is that this actually has people of color in it. That said, there's not many. You'll see, I would call it, though some of them are prominent, I would call it tokenism. I can already anticipate the comments, so just fuck off about it. I don't care what you think if you don't like when I talk about this shit. Go watch another channel. It's a thing. This is a deck that came out this year. When I see token diversity or representation in a deck, I think you know better. You just aren't really interested in creating an equitable experience for the user. You're saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to throw in a couple people of color, done, but I can still have a pretty white deck. This deck is all white. There's no people of color in it, although they're vampires. The argument I can hear people making already is, well, they're vampires, da-da-da-da-da. Fuck you, you've seen Blade, shut the fuck up. We can have people of color who are vampires. So that's where this one gets 1 point, but it gets a point taken away because it's tokenism to me. Both of these decks, to me, are very heterosexual. I'm told that this is sort of a queer representation. I didn't see any, in the sense that every coupling in both of these is male-presenting, female-presenting. Now, I don't know details. Maybe I'm seeing male-presenting figures and female-presenting figures that are queer. I don't know. But they're both heterosexual. That annoys me for personal reasons. And I can't even say, it's this deck is old. This is a 2010 deck. Queer people still were out and talking and living at that time. I don't know much about the creators of any of these decks. I purposely didn't look into it because what's less important than their creations in this particular case is the fact that Llewellyn chose them. This, though, feels like a deck a creator made from a place of enthusiasm and passion. This feels like work for hire for me. By which I mean it feels like Llewellyn's like, we need a new vampire deck. Let's get these two guys to do it. This has the qualities of something that came out of someone's passion for a topic. This has the quality of being something someone was hired to do. Now, again, I get annoyed in reviews when people assign motives to creators, and here I am doing that. And that's fair. You know what I mean? But again, this has more to do with Llewellyn than it is with the creators. If this were another publisher, I probably wouldn't be talking about this. I would have looked at it, said meh, and moved on. The thing is that this feels like Llewellyn, where it was coming from. This feels like where it's going. This is a serious work of tarot, whether or not you like it. The book, which we'll look at, and this book is famously good. I read most of it. I don't read all the card descriptions. I get really bored, but it's a good book. This book does more than just sort of serve as a guidebook for the deck. It is a primer in tarot. It goes over astrological associations. It goes over Kabbalah. I have a problem with Kabbalah and tarot in that I think it's appropriative. That's not Ian Daniels' fault. And I also feel like you can't really remove Kabbalah from tarot at this point because it has become so woven into it, so that what readers need to do is maybe not so much worry about whether Kabbalah is appropriative, but rather understand why it's appropriative and find ways of atoning for that. For example, talking about it. Ian Daniels clearly knows his stuff in the way that Robert M. Place knows his lore in his vampire deck, which is really a Dracula deck. I almost brought it out. I didn't, because it's not really part of this conversation. Both of them know the lore that they're working with, and both of them are able to make clear connections to vampire lore and their decks and tarot. They elevate each other, which to me is what a themed deck should do. The theme should be elevated by tarot should be elevated by the theme. This to me does not do that, and in fact there are many cards in this deck where I wouldn't know this was a vampire deck because there's really no evidence of it. This feels more like a comic booky action adventure deck with the occasional kind of goth vibe. This is very clearly a vampire deck. Why am I comparing these two when they're created by different authors? Well, mostly because they're the same publisher, and also because, again, Llewellyn drew the inevitable comparison by giving them much the same name. So that's kind of my thing here, is that I feel like Llewellyn has decided in recent years to cater to a market that isn't really interested in learning about tarot. They just want a deck of cards that kind of, speaks to their vibe, and they don't really want to read the guidebook, and they don't want to really know. They just want to go with it. Like, the guidebook for this doesn't really get much into vampire lore at all. It also doesn't really get into tarot lore at all. Now, if you know about me, you know that I'm not really interested in esotericism from a tarot standpoint, so the stuff in this book technically is not really interesting to me. I mean, it is in the sense of this video, and it's well written. It's a really good book. I more prefer tarot that doesn't really care about the Kabbalah, for example. But this, to me, just doesn't work. Now, I can't remember if I said this already, so I'll say it now because I did try to make this video already. No shame, no shade to these two creators. There are some beautiful cards in this deck. The book is written fine. It's well written, it's clear. To me, this is more for pop culture purposes, and this is for tarot readers. And this, to me, is where Llewellyn seems to be headed. In fact, there's a sameness to their decks, same, S-A-M-E, not N as in Nancy E., in that this could have been any other Llewellyn artist, in my opinion. And again, I don't mean to sort of denigrate the creator's work. They did a good job in that sense. This just, to me, has, ironically, blood in it. This is a little bloodless to me. And it has more to do, I think, with Llewellyn than the creators, because they already have a vampire tarot that does this. So this is clearly this is for the people who don't want to get invested in sort of actually doing the work of learning how to read. I'm being very biased here, full disclosure. This is a trend that I've noticed with Llewellyn. And I'm biased against them too, because I have some problems with other things they've done recently. Not the least of which is releasing a book with the same title of a book that I submitted to them that they rejected and did not tell me that they had another book in their pipeline with that title. Whatever. It's none of my business, I guess, but whatever. That's not the reason I'm doing this, though, because there are Llewellyn decks I love. I really like this deck. I don't know that I'll use it, honestly, but I think it's good in a lot of ways because I can see the passion in it. The Shadowscapes is a Llewellyn deck. That's one of my favorite decks. There's others. The World Spirit was a Llewellyn deck. But the old Llewellyn is gone, and this is what's taken its place. And that's sort of what I wanted to talk about. And it makes me sad only because I don't like this. I'm not a gatekeeper. I don't care, ultimately. I like to make fun of theme decks. I don't really want a Garbage Pail Kids deck. I don't really like the idea of it. But whatever. If that's your thing, good. And if this is your thing, good. This isn't about you. To me, it's about the publishing industry, the tarot publishing industry in particular. This has heart. This feels like it was just a marketing gamble from Llewellyn, not from the creators. The creators have done their job, but I feel like they were hired to do a job, and that's what they did. This was someone creating something they really needed to get into the world. So that's how I feel about these two. This is going to get dropped in the return box. This I might hang on to. So let's they're both this is sort of a newer printing of this. It's the 8th printing of it. If you're curious, this just came in the mail yesterday. This I got a couple days ago. So they both have the same box, really same dimensions. I honestly wish that they would put less work into the box and making the box actually usable. So both have a book. This book is all text, all information. Whether you like it or not, that's another story. But I'll read some examples of it later. This book is all pictures, and it's much thinner. So there's a full-page picture of every card. That, to me, is not necessary. Although, as an artist, I think I would like seeing my cards this large and glossy and beautiful. So that, that the production quality is lovely. So, yeah. There's some spreads in both. There's, this isn't bad, the book. It's good. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I said, it's well written. So I'll just read you a little, a little preview. You have always known there is a secret world existing alongside our own. You have seen glimpses of it in the shadows, heard its whispers in the night air, and felt the call deep within your soul. The sun sets on the world of mortals. Awaken to the night of the vampire. Within this deck, the living and the undead lead an eternal dance suspended between heaven and hell. The tale of a vampire, as told in these cards, is of powerful beings struggling to do what is right in a world that can be dark and terrifying. This is your tale as well, and, just like the children of the night, many wonders exist within you that will be discovered when you can see for yourself, for all that you are. Forgotten treasures can be found within the shadowy places, so shuffle the cards and uncover what has been lost. In darkness and light, you shall see and be seen. So then we get into some, little bit of vampire stuff here. Tower of the Vampires depicts the nightly struggle of humans and vampires to make sense of their own existence, face their fears, and find their dreams. Now, that is a difficult thing to demonstrate in cards, and I think that that's one of the reasons why this is not quite as successful to me from a creator standpoint. As you'll see, some of the cards are absolutely beautiful. One of the things that really kind of gets me, though, is that when you read the guidebook, you'll see they'll describe things that you wouldn't necessarily know were real or part of the card if you hadn't read this. They're not evident in the image. This is much more heady. It's much more intellectual, I would say. And so, in a way, there's nothing wrong with having maybe a more down-to-earth guidebook. Although this is it makes total sense to me. And again, it's weird to say, let's compare these two decks because they have nothing to do with each other than the publisher and the idea that they have kind of the same title, minus one letter. This one, to me, really does a nice job weaving the lore throughout and making connections, including just the idea of fear, of hunger and desire, the metaphor of being a vampire and the nature of time. All of these things kind of makes more sense. The descriptions of the courts, the way that they're laid out, it's just a lot more kind of detailed. Let's look at the cards. I think these boxes are so stupid. I get that they fit on a shelf, but you can't leave a deck in here once you've taken it out of the packaging because they're going to slide around. So let's get these out of the way. Again, the reason that I even decided to order this one and look at it was because when I saw the backs of this, I thought, well, that's weird. That looks just like that other one. And it really kind of does. Let's zoom in. So interesting. Same cardstock, incidentally. It's a slightly glossy cardstock because, again, they're more recent printings. So this deck, again, the art is really nice. It seems like it's digital painting, but it's very detailed. It's painterly. Both of these are really painterly. This is much more kind of, I would say this is much more sort of 90s-y, like Crow, even Bram Stoker's Dracula, the awful adaptation by Francis Ford Coppola. This feels a little more Twilight to me. And that, again, feels like the audience for this deck. So we start with the Fool. This is a little bit more straight up tarot. This kind of gives the Fool as a journey, really. This sort of woman character throughout the deck sort of comes back in different guises. So you can see, the art is really nice. But again, there's nothing vampiric about this other than that it's a vampire deck. and like she must be innocent and virginal because she's in white, and he's kind of bad because he's in a leather jacket. You know what I mean? But this is very kind of The Crow. It's very 90s to me, which again, I'm a child of the 80s, so. Now here we get into this thing of like, this is a blood line coming out of him creating a lemniscate. Like, it's not really vampire-y other than that there's this sort of lemniscate situation that you can see if you look closely is coming out of his arms. This is very clearly a vampire. Now, in the guidebook for the new one, for this one, he talks about how it's a human and vampire world where they're trying to do the right thing. So there are humans in this, but it doesn't, like, what is this? It's the Empress, the High Priestess, rather. Nice. Is it a vampire? I don't know. She's got two hearts, the moon and the sun. Like, the description in the deck is actually cool because it's a cool Empress card, or a High Priestess. I don't know why I keep saying Empress. So I'll read you just a little bit. Before the veil of mysteries, a vampire priestess conjures visions of the sun and moon. So how do we know this is a vampire priestess? If you look in the guidebook, because it's much closer, you can see she's got fangs. Just kind of a little bit. The symbolism is interesting. How do I don't know that this is, what does this have to do with vampire lore? I don't know. Maybe there's a whole world of vampire lore I haven't learned or discussed. I just feel like this doesn't really feel like a vampire deck, other than that the occasional fang is there, or the book tells me it is. This is like a vampire deck. So here we have the Empress. Now this is Lilith. Again, there have been some historical associations of Lilith with vampires. I don't necessarily associate Lilith with the High Priest, why do I keep doing that? With the Empress. So we start with, legend has it then when Lilith was cast out of Eden, she found new powers in a secret place and became the eternal mother of all creatures of the night. Vampires believe she is the first of their kind and offers protection to them for her most precious children. Now we get into something that's not Lilith. The Empress exudes kind and nurturing energy. This is a card of comfort and gentle healing. Is that Lilith? No. Maybe if you're a vampire, but again, that doesn't contextually make sense to me. Now I'm being a little shitty, and whatever, it's my channel. I haven't made many friends in tarot anyway, so recently anyway, so. So here we have the Emperor. Again, like, very handsome, very attractive Emperor. Is he a vampire? Is he not? I don't know. Can't tell. He's a hot guy. This looks like John Stamos. This feels like a vampire to me in a way, just given the, like, Victoriana. And now, again, that's kind of a stereotype, right? Like, in comic books today, we don't get the Victoriana. Even in Blade. You know what I mean? This could be more Blade, but he's got a cape. I guess that means, I just don't see it. It's a beautiful card, but it just doesn't see it. The Hierophant, this gives kind of the Hierophant to me. This is a lovely card that feels more like death, or maybe the Four of Swords. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't give the Hierophant. So we get these two characters coming back, and the lovers. This actually feels a little queerer than this. Like, this is much more androgynous. This is very definitely male-presenting, female-presenting. These are the two characters from the Fool card. Again, I love this. This kind of modern stuff, I don't need that in a deck. It's fine. The Chariot. I really dig this Chariot in this sort of Mardi Gras mode. But if you know much about Mardi Gras, like, this could be anybody. Really, like, is it a vampire? I don't know. Vampires do tend to linger in New Orleans movies in terms of, like, Dracula 2000 and others, like the originals, I think. But again, like, Mardi Gras, like, it's just not a clear connection to me. It's not logical. This isn't necessarily either, but so these invert strength and justice. So let's find strength. So we can compare them, and we'll put justice aside. Really, neither of these. Well, this is very sort of Waite-Smithy strength. This is an interesting image. This is giving something other than strength to me, but it does at least look vampirish. The Hermit. Like, again, this is a vampire. How do I know? Because he's just standing up there with a gargoyle. He just looks like a dude. There's just, like, a vampirelessness to this. It's not the Gargoyle Tarot. You know what I mean? Um, both of these are fine. Neither of them are particularly vampire-y, but again, not every second of every image needs to do that. So let's look at Justice. These, again, are very different. This does not give vampire to me at all. It's actually a vampire hunter when you read the guidebook. Why are we with vampire hunters now? I don't know, but we are. Justice is Justice. Like, Justice is a card that's really hard to illustrate, so I don't really fault creators, but that's that. These feel very similar. This is finally giving vampire. It's giving Van Helsing. This is a little bit more kind of hanged man-y, but they're very similar in that regard. Death, again, not like, this just looks like the cover of Twilight to me. And again, that's probably the audience, not me. But I'm just sort of like, again, and this does give vampire because she's bleeding, and clearly I don't know if he's a vampire or not. He must be. Temperance. Oh, I have to go fast. I've only got a few minutes on this card. So I may have to come back and do the minors in a minute. These are kind of working. Like, these, I actually really like this one. This one's fine. So I'm going to just kind of go through more quickly now, because you kind of get the point, I think. Like, what's this? Is it a vampire? I don't know. It's a lady in the clouds. Again, you know, you get my point. This doesn't really work for me as the star card either. But these are both gorge. Vampire? I don't know. Lady of the Lake, maybe? So this is my point of, like, this. They're just not, like, this sun card is super cool, super dark. This one is, like, again, just sort of not... It's, I don't know. It's just not working. So Judgment, and again, like, let's be honest, this is not a deck for me. I'm not the audience for this deck. I don't like it. I knew I was going to, but I did want to sort of talk about it anyway, because I like vampires. I think they're sexy, you know. And that's another thing too, right? Is there's different sort of lore, there's different realms that we're talking about. So here we get into the suits. Scepters or wands in this deck. This is cool. Like, I dig this. And this does kind of give the same Waite Smith vibe that we're used to. This feels more like a Gap ad. This doesn't say anything to me. Like, I'm obviously critical of both. This one I like a little bit more. This is a cool card. This is interesting. These sort of veininesses and hearts. This doesn't scream Four of Wands to me. In that the tradition that we're going for. And again, people don't have to do that. This, again, feels like this is kind of giving Blade, but again, it's like the vampire part that's missing. Five of Wands. This is very cool. Again, not really giving vampire very much to me. Like, the art in many of these cards is cool. So, how are we doing on time? I'm just going to start going more quickly so you can compare them both. This might be the only coupling that looks like two men in either deck. So now we're in the courts. This has Lord, Daughter, Queen, and King, so it's a little different. I don't know why Daughter, but... So here we have kind of like... Again, this is giving like Queen of the Damned. A common critique I've heard of this one is like the blood dripping out of everyone's mouths. Like, you don't need that to know they're vampires. Like, that's fair. I didn't really notice until I heard someone say it once. But I like this King of Wands. He's the cover of the book. He's very hot. So now we're in Cups. Actually kind of weirdly similar. Again, all the hets. Nothing wrong with them, I guess. I just don't want heterosexuality shoved in my face. You know what I mean? Like, do whatever you want, but... Like, do I have to see it? I actually really like this card. Oops. I like this. We're fine. So anyway, it's a stylistic thing at this point. I'm not in love with, like, cereal boxes and cell phones in my decks, but that's just me. But you can see too, like I said, there's people of color in this deck, but there's not money. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a lot. It's not like, oh, this is the most diverse vampire deck. It's not. It's I would say tokenism, but many of you will agree with me and many of you won't. So I'm just going to go through these quick. Hopefully you get my point. Obviously, if you like this, great, good. There's a deck for you that you didn't know was out there, or that you did know and you were waiting to hear, and that's fine. I like this guy too. He's also very handsome. Actually looks like a vampire. Swords. This to me is very strange. I mean, I don't know. It's like not. Like, this is cool. I mean, again, this deck is so 90s, and I guess maybe that's what, because, like, I went to high school in the 90s. Like, that's where I live. And, again, aesthetically, this is not for me. Even though there's a lot of really beautiful cards in it. It's just not for me. I don't know. Like, this I don't like. I don't know. It's just too modern. It's too movie. It's too photo. I don't know. Something. Finally, again, you know. So, how we doing? I'm just going to keep going. That's very badass. This is the cover of the box. The thing about this is that it's very homogenized, and this is not. So you do get more variation of character. I mean, there's no fat people in this deck. There's no disabled people in this deck. There's no indigenous people in either of these decks. You know what I mean? It's all very slim and modelly, and everyone's very sexy, you know, in a, like, stereotypical way. God forbid we see fat, sexy vampires. You know what I mean? Like, I want a What We Do in the Shadows tarot. You know, that's the thing that I want. Because those characters are weird and kind of sexy and very queer. I love that show. You know, just What We Do in the Shadows is, like, one of the best sitcoms. And I didn't really like the movie. So the TV show is, like, chef's kiss. Big ups on that one. So I'm just going to go quick because I think I only have a minute. I have to get a new memory card. All right, well, the camera went out on me while I was finishing this because everything's dumb. So you didn't see the last couple cards in that video. I'll just quickly show you the last few. These are the cards. Actually, weirdly, this looks exactly like Kristen Stewart. So these are the last courts of skulls, which would be pentacles. And then this guy, he's the last bunch. So, you know, again, I've been harsh on this deck, this one in particular, and it really isn't. I don't think. That looks very Knives Out, doesn't it? I don't think it's the fault of the creators. It really is my bias, but also I think it has to do a lot with where Llewellyn wants to take tarot. And I guess that's kind of where my frustration is. I think it can be for everybody. I just feel like this is all they're giving us now, when they used to give us much more thoughtful, detailed stuff. But that's where they think the market is, you know, and I guess maybe that's where it is. Like, maybe I'm just like a fogey, cranky gatekeeper and I need to shut up. But I don't know. There's just something that is coming in a lot of mass market decks that is very uninspired to me, you know. And so that's why I kind of wanted to make this video is and, like, whatever, you know, like, who cares what I think ultimately, right? Like, if this is selling well and they're making money, like, that's what their business, that's what they're there to do, to make money, you know what I mean? So I'm sure they don't care at all what I think. And many of you won't either. But to me, it's kind of endemic or emblematic, rather, is the word I'm looking for, of a larger thing, which is kind of, I don't need the Kabbalah. I don't need the astrology to read. I read perfectly fine without it. At the same time, I want decks that seem to be coming from an inspiration point for the artist. And that are really connected to their theme. So I'm sort of picking on this deck because I want to make a point about where things seem to be going. The art is beautiful. The writing is good. It's a fine deck. It's not for me. But it is something that I just find with Llewellyn where it feels like they're just sort of, I mean, I've said it already, so I guess I won't keep repeating the same thing. There's just something, there's a sameness about what Llewellyn is turning out right now, and that to me is unexciting. And it's just a thing I felt like talking about. So that's where I am. This is probably going to go back. I'll probably keep this one. I don't know if I'll use it, but we'll see. This one is just not for me, and it just isn't vampire-y enough. It also could be more. Both of these could be more diverse. This one, it's like, it's almost worse to me sometimes when, like, it could have been like there's some indication that we know diversity matters, but we don't really care enough to like take it all the way. And I don't know that that's the artist's issue here. I fully feel like this is a deck where they were told what to make. I am just guessing that, but it ain't my first time at the rodeo, and that's what this is giving to me. So anyway, hopefully this was interesting. I'm sure there are some people out there who love listening to me complain. But yeah, I mean, I'm a reviewer. That's what I do. And I also, look, I'm a creator. I'm a writer. I've gotten shitty reviews in newspapers. To me, this isn't about the creators, although if they were to see this, I'm sure they would be hurt. I would be hurt too. And I have been hurt by reviews of my stuff. I am pissed off that there's a review on one of my books on Amazon and they gave me like 3 stars because there's a typo. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen professionally published books with typos in them. It's something that happens. But so, again, like, I am empathetic to creators. I also know that when people put their work out into the world, we're going to react to it. And really this reaction, again, is more about Llewellyn. That's where I'm coming from here. My taste in decks is besides the point. What is the point is that this feels well researched, well put together. It feels serious. This feels like, how much money can we get from Twilight fans? I don't know. And again, I'm very, very, very cynical at this point in my career too. So, and that is why you don't see me reviewing a lot of decks lately. There are some decks I'm going to do videos about that are indie decks that I've been excited about. Those I'm all about. You will not see many mass market decks from me, because I never really wanted to showcase them anyway, but they got views. So I'm not only cynical, but I am also an opportunist. So take that, everybody. Anyway, be good. Talk soon. Take care.